So I recently reached out in the community tab here on Instagram and on Facebook for some questions that you feel photographers on YouTube, especially professional photographers, kind of dodge the bullet on and try not to answer. And I'm going to do my best to answer them, or if I can't answer them, explain why. So things like how much we earn, what a good rate to charge is, that sort of thing that you just sort of feel we swerve a bit. And if there's anything in this you feel that I haven't commented on, put it in the comments below, and I'll perhaps do a part 2 to this video. Now, the first one, for me at least, is a bit of a weird one. It's how much do I get paid to use certain bits of kit? Now, I get sent a lot of free kit, and I always try and make sure it's clear. Anything from Pixapro I've not paid for, but anything from Broncolor, I paid the money for. Full retail, don't get anything from them. Anything from Canon, I pay for. Full retail, don't get any money from them. There are things I get given for free. There are things where a brand who's given me things for free will then pay me to do something for them. It wouldn't be on this YouTube channel, but you might find me elsewhere in the world doing like a talk or a seminar where the brand has paid me to go and talk about their product. And I'd like to think that when you see me standing there talking about such things, it's quite obvious. Now, some people do get paid to use certain products. I've been offered money before to shoot a certain camera brand, but it's not something I could do because the terms of the contract was such that I couldn't use other things, and for my work that just wasn't a viable option. But yeah, generally speaking, everything in the studio I pay for out of my business. I think a lot of people are the same. We do get given free stuff, but to be honest, a lot of the time we get given a lot of junk which just turns up at the studio randomly and ends up being distributed amongst the other people in this building. So one question was, how much does it cost to get set up as a photographer? And then this question came in a few different ways. One was, how much does it cost to get set up as a photographer? How much savings should you have? How much should you invest? All of that sort of thing. So I can only give you from my point of view. If you want to set up like this, all in one go, all bought brand new, you're probably going to need £500,000, £750,000. That sort of figure if you wanted to buy everything here brand new. But obviously that's not how it works, because what actually happens is you start off with a camera and a lens, you do some little bits, then you buy a flash, you do a few more little bits. I'd say to become a working photographer, you just need a camera and a lens and you're good to go. You're good to start charging. And that's what I did. I had a Canon 450D and a 28mm 2.8 lens, I think, something like that. And I just cracked on with it and started shooting weddings, and that was it. I was off to go. And then I eventually got a second camera body because I didn't really understand the importance of a backup back then. I just assumed it'd always work until it didn't. And you slowly grow from there, and you buy some stuff secondhand. You sort of inherit some stuff from various places, and then you always give stuff to other people, and it goes back and forth and that sort of thing. And then you get a studio space, and then you build out the studio space, and you get the walls, the offices, the computers, all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't happen straight away. I've got like 5 computers in here, but I didn't start off with 5 computers. I started off with 1. And then eventually I went, I need a laptop too. So I got a laptop, and then I was like, well, actually I need 2 laptops for certain jobs. We've got 2 laptops, and then, it snowballs and it grows. You don't need all of this to do the job. And then it's also important alongside this that when you do leave full-time employment, that you have a year's savings. And that's not saving for you. That is a year's worth of money in your account at all times to fall back on in case you get ill, the pandemic happens, Brexit happens, whatever it may be. You need to have a year's salary set aside to cover all of your overheads. And every time you dip into that, you need to pay it back again. It's not sort of you just deplete it. You need to be making money and putting back into that pot permanently. And a year's the minimum. Ideally, you want to have 3 years sort of kicking around just in case things go really south. But once you become self-employed, there isn't really a safety net in the UK. You're sort of on your own. Now, this particular question I thought was quite good in the current situation. It was, if you're in a massive crisis for clients, what would you do? And funnily enough, I preemptively did this. And this is the YouTube channel. When Brexit was announced, there was a very high chance that the photography industry would take a hard hit following what happened after the vote, which is where every ad agency just stopped booking people. And I set up the Tin House Studio, the website to sell the workshops and the pre-recorded stuff and the one-to-one sessions and the portfolio reviews and the YouTube channel. And this actually makes me enough money to sort of get by between these little areas. So even if photography did stop, this is what it would be. Now, if I hadn't had the forethought to do that, I'd go and work in a bar. And I'd work in the evening, so during the daytime I still had the time to focus on my personal work, or any night job where you can work at night, have free time in the day so you can still sort of get on by. I wouldn't take a 9-to-5 job because that would just mean that I wouldn't be able to do any photography work, and making that transition is so hard, and coming back into it again would be a real difficult challenge. What's a good average day rate for a London photographer, or replace that with New York, Paris, or any major city? Now, this is a tricky one because it depends on what the average standard is. Now, I'd imagine the average day rate is probably something ridiculously low, like £400, because there'll be people out there shooting for £100 a day. But I think a good sort of starting point is between £800 and £1,200 a day for your day rate plus usage. And that's sort of where I'd want to pitch myself as a photographer if I was starting out. Which YouTubers are not real photographers? Now, I obviously don't agree with the statement anyway, but I sort of see what you mean, and I understand where you're coming from with that. And I think it's quite obvious who doesn't actually work as a photographer, and I also don't think they pretend to work as a photographer. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. So some people on YouTube are purely educators, which is great because as photographers, we need educators. And some people are purely professional photographers and you won't have even heard of them. And, you know, I probably sit somewhere in the middle of those two because I now do the YouTube thing, but also my actual 9-to-5 job, which is way more than 9 to 5, is my photography. But yes, I think it's quite apparent. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Learning from someone who isn't a professional photographer will not hinder you in any way. They still know how to teach. They still have the information. What will hinder you more is being very sort of upset and angry about people doing things in a way that you don't think is right. I think, you know, the best thing to do is just be yourself, do your own thing, and just crack on with it. Okay, which brings us to the last question, which is how much money do you make per year? And there's a reason why I've not answered this before, and it's because I'm British and we don't like to talk about money. It is considered extremely rude. But professional photography is a 6-figure salary, although maybe not during the pandemic, but I've not done my accounts yet. But it's a 6-figure salary. It's probably never going to be a 7-figure salary for me unless I suddenly become very famous. But also being in food, I don't think that's going to happen. It's also not a thing I'm looking to achieve. It's not something that I actually want to go, do you know what, I want to make 7 figures a year. That's not something for me, which is a goal. I'm quite happy with the income I make because I actually spend very little. I drive a 12-year-old Kia Picanto and I only wear black t-shirts. And this isn't just for YouTube. This is 24/7. So yeah, life's pretty cheap for me. So I don't really spend money on anything. But it's a nice perk. I think it's always nice to be paid what you're worth, regardless as to whether you want that money or not. It's like a way to value your work commercially. Maybe not artistically, but definitely commercially. Anyway, if you want to know more about being a commercial photographer, do hit subscribe on this channel. If you have any questions that you feel that I haven't answered, let me know in the comments below. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.